you all to the ACE Update interaction on energy efficiency and Indian construction. As cities grow and new cities are born, one crucial factor which will govern the existence of our built environment is energy efficiency. It makes an impact on the entire life cycle of a project and its cost. Apart from the cost, energy efficiency also determines how sustainable our building, construction techniques, and in a broader perspective, our lifestyle is. In contemporary times, energy efficiency also amounts to the use of specific products, technologies in construction, buildings, of office complexes, residentials, etc. All of these so that we can attain sustainability, efficiency, and pass on the benefits to the environment and make way for a greener world, something that we all want. On this note, we have come together to witness an engaging interactive session on energy efficiency and Indian construction. Our speakers will enlighten the audience on specific challenges today and the solutions as well to invoke energy efficiency in the built environment. Ladies and gentlemen, for today's interaction, our distinguished speakers are Dhruv Sarveshwar Lal, founder and principal architect of Dhruv Sarveshwar Lal and Associates, has also designed Equilibrium. Mr. Neeraj Doshi, founder and principal architect of Neeraj Doshi Design Consultancy. We also have with us Mr. Akhil Gannatra, founder and managing director of Clancy Global, and Ritin Gulati, founder and principal architect of Ritin Gulati and Associates. So delegates, get ready to witness a high voltage session on Indian construction and energy efficiency. When it comes to attaining the desired dose of energy efficiency, the designing and planning principles play an important role. And today, we have with us architect Dhruv to speak more about it. An architect with years of experience, Dhruv has worked on numerous projects across the nation. As a professional, he is consistent on retaining old sensibilities while embracing newer innovations in technology and designs. His firm, Dhruv Sarveshwar Lal and Associates, is an architectural and interior design firm catering to the tailored needs of owners, entrepreneurs, and the real estate community. The firm specializes in high-end residential, hospitality, commercial, and retail projects. So let's welcome architect Dhruv.
All right. So going on to buildings as an introduction, buildings have been an integral part of human history, our growth, our development, our identity, and they have always defined future of the entire civilizations. So whenever we talk about man making progress, more or less sooner or later, it is always talking about a building or talking about an area which constitutes of buildings. So buildings, though we are all living in buildings, we treat them as living organisms. There are a lot of human activities that buildings cater to. But on the downside of it, buildings in today's time and age are one of the largest consumers of energy. They're the largest consumers of resources and then generate more waste than any other activity on earth. So a brief introduction to how much resources are consumed by a building. Like 16% of the world's fresh water withdrawal is taken up by a building, 25% of the wood harvested, 70% of global warming is actually attributed to buildings and transportation. Buildings and transportation meaning thereby the transportation, the carbon footprint that is associated with materials that reach your site. As an energy consumption pattern, the developed world has about 22% of the population and about 70% of the energy used. And the developing world has 78% of the population and about 30% of the energy used. Now, as the Indian subcontinent, or rather India as a country, we are ushering into a stage where we probably go into the developing nations, or rather the developed nations, very, very soon. So it is, the time is critical and the time is nigh that we understand what we need to do to conserve the energy that we are going to consume for future generations to come. So I'm sharing a few statistics now here. Moving on, why we are looking towards benefits of green buildings today. Green buildings have not just become status symbol, they've become a way of life. If we don't adopt or adapt to this rather, we would sooner or later falter, and the resources that we are meaning to use or the resources that we are meaning to conserve for our future generations will no more be at our disposal. So in designing a green building, the aim would be to conserve energy and water consumption, reduction in carbon emissions, reduction of waste produced, and lesser water to be consumed. I think that it is time that we rediscover our time-tested ethos, that is designing with these five elements in mind, that is Prithvi, earth, Jal, water, Agni, fire, Vayu, air, Akash, the sky. So today, in talking about design principles, I'm going to be majorly talking about designing with earth and fire, which is site development, planning, and energy efficiency. Energy efficiency can be achieved through various means, a few of them being adopting passive design strategies through building shape orientation, passive solar design and use of natural light, planning and designing spaces using natural light, installing high efficiency lighting systems, usually using properly sized rooms, thermal efficient building shells, maximizing light colors, colors meaning the colors which reflect more light and reduce dependency on artificial lighting, installing high value R value ceiling insulations using minimal glasses on east and west exposures, and so on. So the aims that we are looking towards when we design energy efficiency buildings is conserving natural resources, using less water, optimize energy efficiency, generate less waste, and provide healthier spaces. The thing that most of us are familiar with are the first four things, but the end result or the end desired outcome is the fifth thing that you see here in this PPT. That is to provide healthier spaces for its occupant. There is a great big problem that we are facing with the buildings that we are designing, that is the sick building syndrome. Probably now all of us have been through COVID. We've been confined in our homes for quite a while. We've realized that there is more to a building than meets the eye. Probably there is more to a building than just living in these four walls. Going on, there are cost-effective strategies for energy efficiency. Um, Here I'm going to show you, or rather I'm sharing with you the energy strategies, energy efficiency strategies that need to be used and the cost implications that there are. A lot of times people ask us questions, and a lot of times the client also asks you questions wherein कि अगर मैं green building करूँगा तो what is going to happen? How much money am I going to pump into the entire project? Oh no, 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 I'm not going to do a green building. uh, I don't have the money for it. So the intervention is not financial through and through. It is with design interventions. The most common one is a passive measure where you are doing a climate responsive architectural design and energy efficient envelope and daylight harvesting and integrating of natural resources. The second one, which is a little more costlier in its implementation, is using efficient equipment, efficient building operations like BIM systems. And the third one, that is offsetting any demand of the building by using natural renewable energies. So, though I'm saying that this is going to be a cost intuitive project, or rather a cost intuitive thing, but at the same time you must remember whatever cost is cost implication is going to be there, that cost implication is going to be offset by the building when it gives you a return in terms of energy savings. So why do we need integrated design principles? Like considerable energy implications, Building needs to be made sustainable, large reduction of energy consumption possible, and sustainable development goals. The end goal obviously being attaining net zero buildings. Energy efficient buildings with design strategies, designing the built environment. The aspects of a built environment are basically citing that is the site planning, the design, construction, operations, maintenance, renovation, and deconstruction. Consumption, environmental effects, and ultimate effects are going to be touched by other people in the presentations today. Designing energy efficient buildings comes with a tag of designing as per the climate, that is micro, meso, and macro, the orientation, the sun movement, wind direction, building planning, and the building envelope. Materials and technology, of course, play a very important role in maintaining these things and providing a lesser running cost. So looking at the climate and site orientation, we've got 5 climate zones in India: hot and dry, warm and humid, moderate, temperate, cold, and composite. And all green buildings cannot have the same requirements. This is not a tailor-made thing that this is not a one size fit all thing. This is a tailor-made thing. You have to analyze what place you're working in, what sort of a site you have. If you're thinking that you will learn a thumb rule for green buildings, that is probably not going to happen. So moving on with the hot and dry climate, these are the thermal requirements and physical manifestations. Reducing heat gain is the major drive for a hot and dry climate, and promoting heat loss is also a major drive for designing in a hot and dry climate with passive systems. So as far as passive systems are concerned, when we promote heat loss, there's a lot of introduction of courtyards, wind towers, arrangement of openings, increase in humidity levels, like introduction of trees, water ponds, and evaporative. So I'm going to further share a diagram with you of what happens when you design a building in a hot and dry climate. So in the left diagram on the above screen, you will see that there is a central water body which has been introduced, and there is a larger opening towards the courtyard which is shaded by the sun, which generates cool air, and then there is a smaller opening for exiting of the cool air. On the right hand side, you will see that there is another building, there is a lot of cross ventilation, and where there is the sun, at there you will find deciduous trees which give shade and which cool down the air that comes into the building. There is always a gap that is maintained in the images below. You'll see that there is a pocket of air that has been created to, so to say, maintain or retain the coolth of the air that is generated. Warm and humid climate zone. In summers, you cut out the heat by using trees. In winters, you have trees which do not have leaves and let the air come in. When you have patios or you have extended portions, you shade them with a lattice. For winter suns, the lattice is designed in such a way that it lets the sun come in. You raise the floor of the building so that there is good amount of ventilation under the building, and there is in general no heat or humidity that gets trapped there. An example, a very fine building. This is the Green Corner House at Costa Rica by GOSA. It's a design firm. Moving on to cold climate zone. So there is a lot that goes on here in the cold climate zone. You will see that there is snow on the right hand side. That is the north facing side of the building where a water tank has been made, to which the snow drips down in the form of water, and then rainwater harvesting is done. Towards the left hand side of the diagram, that is the south facing side, you will see patios, you will see greenhouses that have been created, and sunlights in the roof which actually hit a thermal wall or a thermal mass which retains the heat and warms the house even in the absence of the sun when the sun sets. So that leads to lesser amount of energy used in heating of the house after sundown. Site analysis, a major site analysis, a major factor in designing all your buildings. Energy efficient buildings understanding site location, orientation, wind direction, sun analysis, site analysis, neighboring characteristics, site slopes, promoting pedestrianization and using hierarchy. This is very important. That is preservation, conservation, and regeneration. All right. So this is what happens when you plan a building in a site. The amount of runoff increases. So why we do site cutting and filling accordingly, so that you retain the natural slopes of the building. This is done so, and you generate good amount of water percolation to recharge the groundwater. This is the orientation and natural light and shading. You will see the sun angles, the sun orientation, how a building should be placed. On the left, lower left side, you will see good site orientation and ideal site orientation for a building. An example of this is going to be the Terry Training Building South Facade. The principles that you saw above are implemented here. So building shape and footprint, you'll see the building shape is a major factor, since you will see that the floor areas in all the buildings are similar, but the heat loss is much higher because we've reduced the amount of facade that is being exposed to the south and the west sun. Sun and wind orientation analysis. This is what happens when you do a site analysis, right? This is daylighting. The depth of a room is a major factor in daylighting. The shade that you're giving, the height of the room, the size of the opening is a major factor as to how dependent you are going to be on your artificial lighting. A new system that has come up, that is daylight harvesting, being used in a lot of basements these days. Your natural ventilation, how we place buildings, how openings should be placed. Skipping this diagram, this is a more important one for you to have a look for a second. Yeah. Then water efficiency, dual plumbing, rainwater harvesting. We are very familiar with rainwater harvesting. We are very familiar with how it works. Groundwater percolation. A lot of things that we are doing as passive energies in today's and time and age is leading up to this. This is the heat island energy gain or energy release of a city or a building.
After having understood the role of design and planning, it is time for us to dwell on the specific tools and methods we have to address specific issues which have an impact on energy efficiency. To speak more about it, today we have with us Akhil Ganatra, founder and managing director of Clancy Global. As a principal founder of Clancy Global, Akhil has, over the last 15 years, established the practice as a first generation built environment consultant. He has spearheaded the organization to achieve service capabilities across an array of verticals within building services and tech enabled construction management across different domains, which include healthcare, mixed use developments, institutional, and residential, among others. Under his leadership, Clancy Global has completed 300 million square feet over 700 projects in 58 cities across 5 countries, standing among the top 10 practices in India. Today, Akhil will speak on energy modeling and CFD analysis. So let's welcome Akhil Ganatra.
So we're talking about sustainability. Everything green is not sustainable. And that's why all of us are here. There's a lot more greenwash than there is sustainability in the world. So trying to avoid that. Before I speak about energy modeling and CFD, set the context a little bit. 50% of energy consumed in the building is for temperature control and indoor air quality, and 60% of greenhouse gas emissions are from energy. So effectively, air conditioning or temperature control alone contributes to 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a big topic and the most subjective one within the sustainability framework of things. Everything else is a lot more checklist driven. The previous presentation covered a lot about the subjectivity of how shading analysis and sun angles and wind directions and all that can change. So quickly to answer, does it cost to be more sustainable? First, a responsive design process and engineering expertise is free. Just pick the right guys, so there's a lot of knowledge out there. Don't greenwash yourself into a project. Second, for example, renewable energy. Now, solar cells or PV has a return of investment of less than 2 years with net metering. So, renewable energy was the last leg, right? Everyone said 7 years return of investment, 10 years return of investment, but now that also has become 2 years. So, hey, hello, no reason to ignore it. And the final one, the industry has grown enough to have sustainable alternatives for anything that you're specifying. If you're not finding one, you're just not looking hard enough, or ask Google, man, it's so easy. Again, setting context, when you're talking about heat gain, 80% of your heat gain is from the building facade. So we've got 3 architects on the panel right now. They love glass. Who doesn't? So just to give you a little analogy while we are on this slide, uh, a insulated wall versus a brick wall. So a brick wall versus an insulated wall. Now you compare the most advanced double glazed system to a brick wall, and you're getting only 50% of the heat that a brick wall can allow. How much? Just 50%. So glass is actually more efficient than a brick wall. But now you compare that same double glazed unit against an insulated wall, the heat gain is 9 times of an insulated wall. So glass is a necessary evil. So these are on the right hand side. You can see some numbers. Air conditioning is objectified to the extent कि कितना square foot per ton लगाते हो वो बताओ. So 150 square foot per ton, 200 square foot per ton. फिर lead आया तो 250, 260 square foot per ton. So this number kept going up, and also because energy modeling becomes very important because it's giving you heat gain during occupied hours, not during unoccupied hours. So a lot of the spaces we design are not occupied 24 hours or at the peak. Also, as energy modeling does, it shaves off the peak by saying that 24 hours per year में गर्मी ज़्यादा होने वाली है. Is that acceptable? Acceptable. 365 दिन में से 24 घंटा गर्मी ज़्यादा होने वाली है, तो उससे अच्छा एयर कंडीशनिंग कैपेसिटी को 20% कम कर दो. So that kind of logic. It's a trade-off. So, so we've done a building which even does 1100 square foot per ton. So it's a number. You play the number game with us, we can play a lot of it. But what do you do to do it? So these are some passive strategies that you can do at a hygiene level, and architects now have become a lot more conscious of this, where originally was supposed to be an engineer's role, which was stupid to begin with, because engineers never influence building forms and shading devices and what goes on the facade. The architects did. So there are a lot of passive strategies that you can make a part integral while you're planning the space. But we're not talking about the passive things. We're talking about energy modeling and CFD analysis. So this is what I tell everyone. Energy modeling and CFD no longer is expensive. Every project should do it. And if any engineer sits across the table with us and says कि मैं पूरा weather file calculate करके psychometric chart पे each hour of the year map करूँगा to tell you how much wind will come and how much energy will be required, it is bullshit. A human can't do it. That's why we've got computers. It's a case of iterating across multiple data points. So what is energy modeling and CFD? It's effectively telling you that whatever passive strategy you're implementing, what is the extent it can work? How much of a percentage difference does it make? Sorry for being slightly abusive on a webinar, but F dash dash K, because the base case in lead is so bad that we stopped making buildings that shitty long time ago. तो तुम अगर बेस केस से कंपेयर करके बोल रहे हो मैं 50% एनर्जी कम बचा रहा हूँ, तो you're actually comparing yourself again a really low threshold. So sustainability has gone way beyond that. Base case कहाँ चढ़ गया, तुम कहाँ लीड का बेस केस फॉलो कर रहे हो. So energy modeling and CFD is that. So what energy modeling does is effectively give you thermal data. What CFT does is gives you air related data. What we call mixed mode ventilation is the new natural ventilation. Natural ventilation works 40% of time, no matter what tech you're using, no matter how much passive strategies you've installed. Just a small layer of mechanical ventilation makes it a mixed mode ventilation, which means you're still consuming 20 or 25% power of an air conditioning system, but there is a little bit of mechanical ventilation. So energy modeling and CFD is nothing but a proof of the pudding. Anything that you're designing, put it through that engine. No human can process as much information. Let it give you an output. You'll know how much of your strategies are actually working. It won't become my feeling against your feeling and my brain is bigger than your brain. It's the computer's brain is bigger than all of our brains, in iterations at least. So I'm not saying they replace human. Again, sort of how underfloor systems should start penetrating, because then you're cooling only the first 6 feet of the space and not anything above it. When you go into a flight, you've got those small nozzles facing you. They're like jet nozzles you see in buildings as well. It's personal comfort, and every green building talks about how controllability is, very highly graded. So we're installing quite a few of these systems where we're integrating the ducts within the modular furniture. So we've got a little 150 sleeve from which a flexible duct can run through. So you're not literally emitting air from the floor, but you're emitting it from a level that it needs to get delivered at. You can use radiant cooling system as a strategy to, typically radiant cooling systems are good for bigger projects or projects that work 24 hours, 18 hours, not projects that shut air conditioning 12 hours a day. I've finished most of energy modeling and CFD analysis. I'll quickly take just a minute and a half and take you through other strategies which are sort of coming into sustainability. Power over Ethernet is the new form of lighting. In lighting, we've moved from the candle to the LED lamp faster than we've evolved in anything else. So power over Ethernet, watch out. All of you will start seeing it in your houses very quickly. Why is it good? Because it can control intensity and color temperature for you all to have a better mental well-being. Now, no one has ever understood a psychologist, though, mental health has become such a big issue. So just trust the psychologist. It makes a big difference. Net metering, again, something that's become now very possible because most of the state grids have taken in net metering. So you don't need that dirty bank of batteries that you're trying to store energy with. Just give it back to the grid and take the money back in your bill. This is very important point. Self-consciousness. COVID has brought a lot of sustainability, self-consciousness. And funnily enough, if you read a lot of global research, most of them says that just by self-consciousness and no physical measure, but people only knowing how much they are consuming, the consumption can go down by up to 60%. So, while all of us are tsunami you stories, first go and look at how much electricity you're consuming at your house. I've got an energy meter, you install one, fun times. IoT's become, sorry for the language again, but a load of shit again, because when we were in Singapore, we were taught dashboard diarrhea. कितना सब dashboard बनाता है, मजा बहुत आता है देखने के लिए, but actionable intelligence zero. So it has to be more action driven, more what can you do driven, rather than मेरे पास सेंसर है और मेरे को पानी का टेम्परेचर पता है, क्या करोगे तुम उसका? Last slide, how sustainability is getting into smart infrastructure. Well, it's not only about operational efficiency, it's about the people that occupy the asset. So a lot of IoT, a lot of sustainability is now become inward looking rather than outward looking. कि मैंने building बना दिया, उसका जो होगा वो होगा. Now it's become कि मैंने building बना दिया, occupant से feedback लो कि अच्छा लगा कि नहीं, ताकि मैं अगला building better बना सकूं. So it's become a case of feedback loop. Last slide, embodied energy. And then other than that, sort of, it's more a checklist approach. You have to be conscious of the things, decisions you're making.
Moving on, the raw material and construction techniques in a project also have an important say on energy efficiency, which can be attained in a project. Now, to speak more about it, we have with us today architect Ritin Gulati. Ritin Gulati, principal architect of Ritin Gulati and Associates, holds an expertise in residential and commercial architecture design. After working with numerous Indian architects, as also as an architect and project manager in Dubai, he started his own firm at a young age of 27. Being environmentally conscious, he designs highly sustainable structures, evoking a sense of nature in his designs while prioritizing on the needs of the client. So let's welcome Ritin Gulati.
There's a very fine line between the construction that is going on here versus the green construction that we are talking about. I'll just give you an example. Developed countries like Singapore, Dubai, undisputedly their construction technology is, say, about 10 years safe side ahead of our technology here. And I'm being very safe here. So coming on to 20 years. So coming on to the kind of green practices that we have in the materials that we use and in the kind of techniques that we use. I'll put some. I have a small time period of about 9 minutes left, so I'll talk about a few pointers here. Firstly, what is the most important component of any construction? It's not the bricks, not the cement, concrete. It's actually water. Water is literally the backbone of any construction. You build 100 square yard house, 2000 square yard villa, an acre of your commercial property. What do you keep in mind as the most important material? That's actually water. You just do not use water from any source. It cannot be groundwater. It cannot just be water from any source. Water has some salt or mineral content. And if you take a water before construction to any testing, you will get a water test report, and it has some amount of salts. There's a prescribed limit. What is to be used for construction, the best for construction, and if it has less pH, that means it's more acidic. It has more of salts. You absolutely should not use that, because आपने देखा होगा new buildings, just recently delivered, and hardly 6 months later you have plaster chipping off. You have lots of bubbling in the paint. Why is that happening? That's literally because the water used is not of good quality for construction quality. Actually, we are last 2 years I've started using the AAC blocks instead of bricks, and that has reduced water consumption in my construction by about 70%. And yes, I quote 70% less. I have the figures. Like, for example, if I'm using AAC blocks, I'm using a chemical to paste those AAC blocks, and that chemical uses about 10 to 12 liters of water for every 50 kg bag. Whereas if I go on to the cement and standard plaster cement, जो mortar का use होता है, the water usage is about 4 times. And then, of course, after applying the plaster, you have to do all the tarai. It takes lots of time. So I'm talking about step-by-step construction and water use. So moving on to your AAC blocks, I understand that people will have apprehension. During the making of AAC blocks, you have lots of, the carbon emission is there. It's as compared to bricks, it's slightly more expensive. But the amount of time it takes, the construction time, the amount of water it uses, the amount of manpower it uses, reduces drastically. And I'm actually talking, it contributes to your construction cost as well. 5% maybe, 7% maybe, but it does reduce. Coming on to your, I'll come back to the water part. So if you're using water, use it from an STP. Use a treated water source. STPs are an amazing source of water. Again, test it. It should be a general practice. It should be a mandatory practice for architects, for engineers, for contractors to furnish a water test report, because using groundwater, using any source of water is absolutely going to harm your building if it's not correct. Similarly, moving away from water, there are some techniques which are very green. Is if you have a single story house, or let's say multiple story, why not have those glass tiles or glass bricks on your roof, which can contribute in addition to all the windows and fenestrations you have on the surfaces. Let's use more of glass bricks on the roof here, so you'll have amazing amount of light entering your house. So there are very small but very important construction materials, techniques that are available and which we all need to incorporate. But yes, I would focus in the green aspect of the construction. I would really focus on the water usage, water quality, and reducing the water because water is literally going to cause World War III.
Thanks, Ritin. And now we would like to invite architect Neeraj Doshi, who has been patiently waiting for his turn. Neeraj got his international experience with one of the top firms of the world, Foster and Partners London. He has worked on projects in the US, Denmark, China, Riyadh, UK, Ireland, and India. That's quite a handful. His experience is very diverse, from high-rise tower, airport projects, to elephant enclosure in a zoo. Currently, he's working in Pune with a vision to build a design organization and involve dynamic international partners. His designs are backed by strong research and a commitment to sustainable design practices, providing solutions with a global insight within a local context. Today, Neeraj will speak on how energy efficiency can be achieved using evaporative cooling systems. So let's welcome Neeraj.
Sustainability is definitely a very important topic, because we may live this lifetime, but we have no idea what the next generation is going to have after our party is over, kind of things. It could be in There was fabulous presentations earlier. In the first, we saw all the planning principles and design and planning principles and the list of things which we can do. Then how the softwares can help us to do that. Okay. Then we also learned a little bit about actual construction background, water, how important is water. And I completely agree, water is becoming very important. I am a little bit going to jump into the projects which I have built using some sustainable experiments, I would say. It's not 100%, okay? I can't say this is the 100% way to do the sustainable building, but these are the, just like experiments of truth, these are the experiments of sustainability, right? So I'm going to share my screen and walk you through 2 projects, okay, which was basically based on evaporative cooling system as a main support factor for that design development. This is a very simple, I try to make things simple for myself to start with, okay. So inspiration, simple, passive evaporative cooling systems. They've been around for longest time. Simple, everybody has seen these towers, the wind passes through this, it cools down because of the way it touches water and cools the environment around, it heats up and escapes the volume. Simple principle. That combined with some little difference in roof system. So you allow the air to pass above our roofs. Maybe we raise the roofs a bit and allow it to pass through our buildings, and also have this fabulous flat surface for lots of solar panels. Ting, dollar marks. The same system can be incorporated with these flat roofs, where a simple 1 meter by 1 meter section, which can take the air in, which could be hot or humid, and why it will attract air in is little bit sprays of recycled water inside those tubes will cool down the temperature of the air inside those tubes, creating negative pressure, pulling the air in, throwing it out from the bottom area. As Ankit said, that air circulation at the lower level is much more helpful because it will raise up as it will heats up. You don't want air coming from top. It's better to be from below, which kind of a principle here. Same simple module multiplier, okay? Once you multiply that and create a huge grid out of it, okay? And then you can base your whole plan around these. So it's a very small plan for you to look at, but still you can see those are everywhere. They are in living room also, in dining also, in courtyards also, in a puja also, and all the bedrooms. So they are giving air circulation for all the spaces. It looks simple. It was a little difficult to plan the whole house around this, but somehow we achieved it and we are happy with it. In section, you can see that clearly where all this air circulation is happening in the house, okay? And believe it or not, means we tested this with a single module, and we somehow, it was very rudimentary site testing. We somehow realized we can drop down the temperature almost to 6 to 7 degrees Celsius, which is quite huge. And I'm sure if you multiply it and have a little bit of greens around, we can even achieve 10 degrees difference by doing this. Even if you consider 40 degrees outside, 30 degrees is way better temperature to play around in the house. And at the same time, it's not a bad architecture. It still gives you a nice kind of a space around those. So we are happy with the spaces. Client is quite happy. And yes, we're going on the site for this, which is quite exciting. Next project I'm going to talk about is, it's a mansion, okay? And it was kind of a challenge for ourselves. Arey yaar, mansions to gas guzzling honge. So we said, no, come on, let's try to make it as sustainable as possible. What can we do? So there is a small video here, which I'm going to. Can you see the video? Can you hear it?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. But I can't hear the audio. Can you hear the audio?
Yeah, it is audible.
Of Pune, India, the Hovering Gardens residence aptly uses natural elements in its creation.
Is it loud
such
enough?
as water bodies,
Yes.
stone walls, landscaped areas on all levels. This helps it merge seamlessly with its environs on the one hand, while making it stand out on account of its architectural beauty. Climate as well as sustainability, which are often neglected or compromised while designing mansions,
The video is
were
slightly
in fact
cheesy, but
the
it
key
suffices for a
driving
lot of
forces
crowd.
for us during the planning stage of this project. It is therefore based on an H-shaped plan, wherein all the spaces have 3 external walls. This enables optimum use of natural light and ample cross ventilation, thus reducing the need for artificial lighting and mechanical ventilation. In keeping with the predominantly green character of this project, an indirect evaporative cooling system has been installed extensively with a view to reducing the reliance on conventional air conditioners. Also, shading devices have been used in the form of huge cantilevered slabs that give a sort of hovering effect while at the same time offer grounding to the building. Strategically located triple height atriums on the inside accelerate natural ventilation through stack effect, and the skylights not only add to the visual expanse of the space but also help in bringing down the energy bills further. Home to a family of 5, this house encompasses the individual character and needs of each family member, seamlessly blending traditional elements with modern architecture. This can be seen in a calming private veranda attached to the grandmother's room, surrounded by specialized plants and lawns. The daughter's love for reading and nature has been conceptualized as a mezzanine corner in her room with a complete glass roof for her to enjoy her huge collection of books while looking out at the trees or the rain. The son's bedroom, where he entertains his friends, is designed with layers of platforms for multiple people to sit and hang out. The master bedroom opens with a memory wall, helping the couple relive their beautiful moments each time they enter the room. At the heart of the house is the family room for the entire family to hang out or eat together with an expanse of greenery on both sides. For formal get-togethers, a spacious living room has been planned with an attached outdoor party deck. The rest of the house has been designed keeping in mind flexibility in space change in accordance with family evolution. With the hovering gardens, we seek to set a benchmark in sustainable design as well as a rich spatial experience.
So this is a basic diagram for that project. We can go back to this diagram in detail later with some time, but you can see all those fancy arrows which are basically explaining the whole system in the house.
Now, attaining energy efficiency in the built environment is not an easy task because it requires a proper symbiosis. The symbiosis of architects, designers, as also energy consultants, not to mention the people, the engineers, and not to mention the guy who's funding the project. How can I forget that person?
The God himself has
The God
come
himself.
down upon us.
Yeah. Then there are bigger challenges like political will and policy changes. So yeah, quite a number of them. So today in our panel discussion, we will try to address some of these. So let us start. The first question. Let me shoot it to Mr. Ganatra. Like what can contractors, designers, and architects, like we as these people, even engineers, as democratic elements of architecture and design and construction, do to ensure that future cities are both energy efficient and sustainable?
First thing first, make energy modeling and CFD analysis compulsory across projects because 30% of your greenhouse gas emissions are coming from there. You see, I'll tell you, 60% of greenhouse gas emissions are from energy. So if you've solved air conditioning and embodied energy, which means materials of where everything is coming from, you've solved the energy problem that you can do yourself. Forget what the government is doing. First, you're the promoter putting in the money. That's the two things that you can do quite easily. In terms of sort of what more can be done with regards to sustainability, I mean, secretly, it's more to do with how sustainability and smart can marry each other. Because somewhere in sustainability, we are forgetting that the people that we are saving the world for, their quality of life is also very important. Their efficiency is also very important. So sustainability and smart have today become a function of intent, not a function of extra capital cost. Surely it's a lower operating cost. It doesn't cost more to build sustainable and smart. So what can the industry do? Have the intent and get people who are inspired by doing sustainability and smart. And don't look at them, as different silos. They're actually the same thing. You're doing it for the people, by the people.
I was also wondering about the per capita consumption of steel and per capita consumption of glass, how it is going to create an impact on that.
In construction, we are using a lot of steel. That's absolutely correct. And we are, in fact, reducing the amount of steel by new materials and new technologies. Like, for example, I mentioned about the AAC blocks. They are very lightweight concrete blocks, right? So the amount of dead load brick construction would be putting on the structure, that will be forcing you to use a lot of steel. Instead, I've saved about half a kg per square feet, like raw calculation, worth of steel in a construction. So that is just an example. So that's how if you start moving to newer products, lot of construction houses are moving towards prefab, and that is something which is saving a lot of cost because it is saving a lot of material, and it is saving a lot of space and time. So it's all directly proportional. It's all very linear, directly proportional. You start with one step and you'll keep on moving in the right direction. So I think, and we can discuss that at length. This webinar would be very small for that.
A load bearing structure has the least steel consumption. Why don't architects do load bearing structure? क्योंकि कभी भी दीवार तोड़नी पड़ जाए client को तो क्या करेंगे? So you have to get out of that. Most of European countries are heritage structure built 200 years ago, and they've emptied them out from inside and done anything that they want. And all of them were load bearing structures. So steel consumption कम करने के लिए पहले तो सब load bearing करो.
See, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that we are heading towards buildings which are going to be multiple floors or multiple levels. So sooner or later, we've got to engage in a technology system where we have to reduce the footprint that we have of the building on the ground, which is going to further, make the building energy efficient. But when in trying to do that, I don't think we can go in for load-bearing construction. I think load-bearing construction in general has gone out of trend for the past 20 years or so. It is not just the client who says कि मुझे कल दीवार तोड़नी पड़ गई. It is also the architect who says कि I want larger ceiling heights and I want all these things to, I want sunroofs, I want this and that. So load-bearing construction is probably not the entire way to go as far as I'm concerned.
I think the best way right now I see is, I always compare sustainability with the dieting a bit, it's kind of similar approach, okay? And I heard these stories, the cholesterols are bad, then suddenly a doctor came and said there are good cholesterols and there are bad cholesterols. So the good cholesterols are important for your body, the bad ones are not, and blah, blah, blah. Same thing happens in architecture also. Means right now, suddenly there is a huge experimentation in wood, okay? And wood is becoming a more sustainable material if you use that wood responsibly, because the embedded energy of wood is a lot less than any steel, concrete, or load bearing, or any RCC structures. So hence the whole Northern Europe is going back to wood, okay? But provided it is built on a very responsible way. And I kind of believe in it. Means earlier we used to say no to wood, and it's like a cholesterol issue again, and we are saying no, this is a good cholesterol kind of thing, we should use wood.
Good again.
I think that is going to probably change over time. In the 1960s in the US, they came up with a food table wherein milk was the thing.
Yeah,
it was top of the food chain. Right?
Yeah.
So if you had milk, you were supposed to be the best, in the sense your body would grow and this and that.
And now
By the
milk
end
is
of the
considered-
1990s, they came up with a study which said that the countries that actually have milk consumables or milk products as consumables, they have the highest rate of cancer. So science, technology, everything is evolving. You have to test for yourself as to what suits you, what suits your country, what suits your climate, what suits your
I
practice.
mean, agreed. I mean, any international research or Indian research talks about microclimate, not about macroclimate.
Yeah.
Also, when we talk about smart, we talk about neighborhoods and communities. We don't talk about cities. खाली
Definitely.
smart city हमको स्वच्छ भारत की तरह नाम मिल गया है, but any smart document you read, it's a neighborhood-oriented thing.
Yeah.
Similarly, anything that you do with the building or with any built environment, it's microclimate responsive, which is why, sort of what's in your immediate vicinity is more important than what's happening in the world.
So is it easy to achieve energy efficiency across all of these?
It's a perspective, it's way of doing things now. Means is it again going back to dieting? Is it easy or difficult to diet? Okay, it's kind of it's you need to change the sensibility of living, how you're eating your food. Your food becomes you when you have that relation to the food. Okay, what kind of food you eat, right? So the same thing, it's the sensibility that needs to come into while making architecture. It could be a big airport, it could be a small, really one-bedroom residence. When the sensibility, right?
Yeah, it's asset class responsive. I mean, finally, every asset class evokes, and what we said about before this microclimates, if an asset class is larger, it has got multiple microclimates. But you have to deal with them as multiple microclimates rather than one large asset जिसका पूरा system हम देख रहे हैं कैसे चलेगा.
But in projects like these, there is one more factor that I'd consider. That is, there is a lot of education that needs to happen in terms of the client, right? As far as people are concerned, you
So
have
I
to-
don't know. I mean, I agree and disagree with that. It's because education is overrated in the wrong areas and underrated and underdelivered in the right areas. Most of smart and sustainable is actually research that's already done, and AI is nothing but converting that research into an algorithm that can look at data. The logic of the algorithm is historically established. We've got IT now to put the algorithm to do it continuously.
you got the data to back it up.
Yeah, if you know what I'm saying. So quite often with new technology, what's also happening is everyone says new technology. जैसे उसी ने पूरा दुनिया बना दिया. मतलब 30 साल पहले नया technology आया. IBMS is 30 years old. Sustainability, UNFCCC was founded in 89. Kyoto Protocol was signed in 96. ये सब नए नए बच्चे अपने जैसे हम भी नए नए बच्चे हैं. Like these technologies are new to the whole world. No one is better or worse. In fact, in India, I think we are way better than the world.
No, but education is important. I will tell you a simple story. Okay,
I would say client education. That is what I meant to say.
Presentation to the client, okay, on sustainability, and client just to show off comes in his Hummer.
Yeah.
Then I had to rethink whole my strategy, how to convince this guy about sustainability who is using a bloody Hummer on a daily basis. Come on, you need to educate these people, right?
Usage of cement in our construction. How do you see what kind of cement will be appropriate to use for energy efficient construction or sustainable construction?
Gyprock has a plaster. Obviously, everybody's heard of it. That uses 1 liter per 25 kg bag or so, and then you don't need to, water it or anything of the sort. So we can't do away with cement, but whatever we're doing as far as interiors are concerned, as architects, we talk about construction a lot meaning a lot. And there is no concentration on the interiors of a building and what goes on in, layering of the building. So it actually, if you see, construction makes 30% of the entire industry, 70% of the industry is concentrated on interiors. There is a great amount of concentration that needs to happen on the interior products simultaneously.
But there are ways how you use a cement. Means there is a fabulous technology.
To be honest, it's back to that question, Ms. Anal, to be honest, that whether it's cement or whether it's literally anything you use for the built environment has a more sustainable alternative now. It's down to asking the question कि मैं जो cement वापर रहा हूँ इससे कोई sustainable cement है क्या? Right from conduit to everything, literally. Right now there's sustainable alternatives for everything you use for built environment. Sort of with COVID, most of the, if not most, but many MNCs have declared by 2020 they'll be carbon neutral, by 2030 they'll be carbon neutral. और वो भी story है ना, because it's relativity. Decarbonization and deep decarbonization, दोनों में फर्क क्या है? दोनों में कार्बन तो अभी भी जा ही रहा है, खाली एक को deeply निकाल रहे हो तुम.
Adapting technology is essential for every construction project. How do you see that it complements sustainability?
It's big time in terms of, again, trying to simplify it is net zero aspect. Okay. You generate energy, what you consume. Okay. To do that, okay, if I on my house, I have fixed 15 kilowatt of solar system. Okay. So, and I run with my office, I run what co-working space also. Okay. So earlier I had non-AC co-working spaces. Then I had net zero. Okay. Then I had minus 1,000 electricity bill, which was minus. So I started putting ACs because my bills were in minus only on solar panels. Okay. So it was not only net zero, I was going on the other side. Okay. So these automation, how much energy you're using, where you're using, if there is nobody in the room, the lights goes off, simplistic matters can definitely help to really consume what you need and produce what you need. Okay, it will help there for a exact net zero principles, and I really believe in them.
If you go back to the basic law of physics जो स्कूल में पढ़ा था, energy cannot be destroyed or created, it can only be transferred. So what even machines are doing now, for example, I don't know how many people are aware, but there is plasma technology and magnetic technology that's developing significantly at this point. What plasma technology can do is sustain heat without additional energy being contributed for a longer time. Which means what earlier 40 kilowatts could do, only 4 kilowatts can do now, because it takes a month for it to heat up. But after that, it's taking only 10% of the energy. So energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's just how the transfer can be more efficient. That's where all of us are going towards. When it comes to material, it's the instinctive or innate equipment they're using to produce that material, जिसका power consumption कम हो रहा है, इसलिए सीमेंट ज़्यादा sustainable हो गया ना, क्योंकि पहले जो मशीन बनाती थी और आज मशीन बनाती है अलग है.
That in contemporary times, to what extent, and I would like Dhruv to address it first, to what extent can we rely on traditional Indian architecture to address the energy efficiency in the existing environment, in the contemporary mode?
I think for whatever we might do, we can never shake the foundations. And these are few things that are the foundations of a lot of construction techniques, methods, a lot of inventions, and there have been the basis of a lot of development for new materials too. Right. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we can negate them in any way. We can probably keep them as a foundation and move on or develop on them.
No, I love Hawa Mahal. So I can have a Hawa Mahal in every house. Yeah. Or I would love to have a house right in the middle of water. That's your Udaipur fort. So can we do that? So
I'm sorry, I'm going back to energy modeling, but it's also a case of doing an energy model and CFD for these old heritage buildings and seeing what is the extent of impact they made.
Like I said, we can dwell or we can dwell upon them now that we have the technology.
That's it.
We know what we are doing, so we can keep that as a foundation and develop it in a better way.
Sustainability does not cost more, and anyone who even thinks that today is probably coming from a village. Sorry for anyone who really thinks that it is from a city, but I mean,
correct.
Hello, meet us. So you've got Mr. Nair. ACE Update is doing a brilliant job with the information it disseminates. Read more of it, and you'll realize that there's anything and everything that can be more sustainable. अगर हमने बोलना चालू कर दिया ना कि sustainable buildings are cheaper to build, and they are actually cheaper to build.
Yeah.
Today, a rammed earth structure costs me lesser than a RCC or a steel structure.
Yeah.
Okay, so the education. Let's stop saying that महंगा है कि नहीं. Let's start saying sustainability और smart सस्ता पड़ रहा है. तुम्हारा asset capital cost में ही सस्ता पड़ रहा है. Asset yield भूल जाओ भी. वो जमाना गया कि तुमको ROI समझाना है sustainability के लिए. Net capital cost, if a building consumes 225 square foot per ton versus 550 square foot per ton, my capital cost of air conditioning system is 50%. Am I getting that money back to do something more sustainable? So sustainable buildings, believe you and me, with the offsets that are available, are actually cheaper to build now. They're not expensive. So the education has to be sustainability is cheaper.
We are spending money to prove that you are sustainable. Okay. lot of money goes into the report making, this, that, to get a LEED certification. If you're smart, you don't need to prove somebody else you're smart. You're smart. You just be smart. That's it. Okay. So a lot of money is going into the certification cost. Okay. Of course, that is needed for.
बहुत एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट होता है मैं भाई छोड़ दे नहीं तो अपने फार्मर जैसे स्ट्राइक पे जाना ना वैसे ये लीड वाले स्ट्राइक पे चले जाएंगे इंडस्ट्री बंद करवा देंगे.
No, that is always a regulation is required for people who don't follow. Okay. But people who are sensible and honest, you don't need regulation for them, right? So
The papa of energy efficiency in India is MOEF and not LEED. Ministry of Environment और Forest ने जितना किया ना पूरे कंट्री के लिए उतना कोई रेटिंग सिस्टम ने एक बूंद भी नहीं छुआ है. The Ministry of Environment and Forest has put STPs everywhere, rainwater harvesting everywhere. अभी तो इंडस्ट्री में कोई पूछता भी नहीं है कि रेनवाटर हार्वेस्टिंग लगाना पड़ेगा क्या. अरे रेनवाटर हार्वेस्टिंग कंसिडर किया कि नहीं. It's reversed. So regulation has a huge impact. Ministry of Environment and Forest is the papa of energy efficiency. Everyone else that is saying that doing sustainability खाली story सुना रहे हो चुपचाप sustainability को impact कर रहा है और अपना काम चले जा रहा है.
simple factor, recharge your borewells. If you make it compulsory throughout India, okay, every rains we need to recharge our borewells. Simple as that. These regulations needs to be there.
MOEF को 2 लाख फुट के ऊपर नहीं 200 स्क्वायर मीटर एप्लीकेबल कर दो. Anything that is more than 200 square meters requires MOEF.
Practice what you preach and be very faithful, very truthful about what you're doing, first to yourself and then to your client. There is nothing else that is going to govern what you are going to do as far as a sustainable practice or a sustainable building is concerned. If you've got your heart in the right place, if you know what you're doing, that is about it. Don't look towards anything at all.
Go green, go solar, and use every inch of your space green, be it use of water, use of any construction material, and exactly practice what you preach. We are doing it less, yes, but we need to do it more.
Sustainability सस्ता है, पैसा बचता है.
A perfect balance of need to greed is very much required right now. Means you need to somehow balance it. People are getting too greedy. Okay, you need to come back to what is needed. Okay, that's very important. Okay, if you understand your needs correctly, okay, then I think things will be much better for the next generation and our generation.
Indeed, it was quite an interesting conversation, unlike some of our previous interactions. And thank you, panelists, for making it so interesting and exchanging your valuable thoughts on today's topic, energy efficiency and Indian construction. Thanks to all delegates and viewers. So with this, we would like to announce the closing of today's session. Request you to stay tuned for more such sessions.